It seems like an obvious one to answer, really, if we try and ask the question, was Chelsea's season successful? We're talking about a team that would have had aspirations of competing for a title with the money they'd spent in the summer, new ownership, obviously, and Thomas Tuchel was pretty well liked at Chelsea after some of the success he'd had, but it didn't go well for them this season, did it, Dave?
No, not much went right, did it? To be honest, a lot of decisions made by the board, in particular, mystified many of us, and a lot of the play that was going on the pitch mystifying people as well. Especially when there was a lot of experienced heads in there still who've been in and around this squad for quite some time, and just some of the performances ultimately not good enough. And it's really hard to put a finger on it. But a lot of it has kind of stemmed from the new ownership. A lot of decisions made. Obviously, sacking Tuchel for one being really where it all began, didn't it? And it started to unfold. And we were just talking, weren't we, saying he had 10 points at the start of the season. They only ended on 44 points at the end of the Premier League season, which seems absolutely, unthinkable, really.
When you consider how early he went as well, and they weren't really doing that well at that stage either. In August, Chelsea's season didn't get off to a good start. They beat Everton on the opening day. They drew with Spurs, but then they lost 3-0 to Leeds. That seems like a massive turning point, really, of Thomas Tuchel's time at Chelsea. They then went on to beat Leicester, but then lost to Southampton. So they played the 3 relegated teams in a row and only took 3 points. That wasn't a great start to the season, and it seemed like it was kind of destined to kind of be a Thomas Tuchel turnaround job for any kind of success. Then they got one further loss in the Champions League to Zagreb, and he was gone. I don't know if I'm over that shock even now, Dave. Are you?
No, and like you mentioned there, and them being beaten by relegation standard teams, it's happened this season. Like get to the end of the season, the very best teams in the league have dropped points against relegated teams. Obviously, you got the likes of Southampton shocking Arsenal towards the end of the season. No one ever really saw that happening, especially when it looked like they were all kind of dead and buried. So I just think it was a very impulsive decision by their owner to do what he did, and he should be still at the club. And I'm sure you'll speak to any Chelsea fan at the minute would love Tuchel to still be there. And I don't understand many of the things that have gone on at the club this year, to be honest.
Impulsive is a really good word for it. Yeah. And it's safe to say he's quite impulsive in the transfer market as well. We're talking about a club that have spent 600 million euros plus in 2 transfer windows under Todd Boelhy. And was that kind of setting them up for failure in some way? Because I think we talked on the podcast at the start of the season about some of their summer business, looking quite successful. We praised the signing of Kalidou Koulibaly, although it was a year or 2 later than maybe Premier League clubs would have wanted. That looked like someone who would replace Rudiger well. It was a shame to see Rudiger go from Chelsea. Raheem Sterling, we thought it might be a nice opportunity for him to excel, but was it a case of too much all at once in terms of change in that playing squad?
Yeah, and it's quite funny actually because, when you're obviously in the summer transfer window and you're looking at all the players that your club are linked with, but the actual reality of it was Chelsea were signing all of the players they were being linked with. And you just got to the point where you were thinking, no, come on, this is getting ridiculous now. And it turned out, obviously,
it didn't stop though.
They're making bids for Madueke when you thought that was going to be it. And obviously, they have ultimately ended up bringing in Enzo Fernandez as well. In the end, it was just crazy, and I don't know what the thinking is behind it.
I don't know if there is much thinking other than trying to build for the future, because actually the 2 players that you mentioned there, Madueke and Enzo Fernandez, were brighter sparks in that Chelsea team in the second half of the season. But it seems like Chelsea are kind of trying to build a project when they bring in younger players that have really, really high values because they have such high ceilings as well. And obviously, Boehly made the decision when Tuchel was removed to bring in Graham Potter. But his trust in Potter wasn't really long enough either, was it? It actually seemed like Potter might be on the process of turning things around in some ways. They'd picked up some results. And then a 1-0 loss to Aston Villa and he was gone, which just seems bizarre in itself again because they didn't have a plan at that stage. Removing Potter then and bringing in Frank Lampard, is that something that made their season even worse, Dave?
Well, it certainly didn't make it any better, did it? I mean, it's ultimately the end of an era for Chelsea, isn't it? I think you look at some of the players that were in that squad. I mean, 8 out of the 11 of the players that started in that Champions League winning team versus City are either gone or looking like they're on the way out. Obviously, Edouard Mendy looks like he's leaving. Azpilicueta's coming to the end of his career. Thiago Silva is arguably at the end. Looks like he might have another year or two in him. Rudiger's gone. Reece James and Chilwell, arguably their biggest threats in that team, attacking threats. And they've been kind of chronically injured on and off throughout the season. Kante's going. Jorginho's gone. Havertz looks like he's going. Mason Mount. They're, player of the year for 2 years running.
Is that necessary with Chelsea? Do you think that they're making those changes to make a better squad in the long run?
For me, if 8 of those 11 players are leaving, then they either don't want to be there anymore and they're fed up of the atmosphere of the club, everything that's going on there, or they want to move on and obviously experience something different. But it doesn't bode well if 8 of those players are gone or look like they're leaving. Then it seems a bit strange to me, considering that was a successful team, a title-winning team at that now this is what it's come to, and you look at what they're getting on the pitch. And the fact that you're mentioning there about all those players that were brought in, that we know, come on, if they're not Graham Potter players, were they? It looks like somebody, whoever is on the board, the director of football or Todd Boelhy's just thought these, let's get these in. They're good young players, but they're not going to be systematic players. And you get managers, obviously, delegating with his staff and his team, and they pick for a system, they pick for a team, a specific style of play, and that's also going to be a problem now that Pochettino's got to come in. It's almost about to square one, because he's got to find a set of players, to fit his way of playing, his system, who can actually play in that manner and that system, and the rest of them, they're going to be having another clear out.
And it's funny because with all the money that they spent last year and the volume of players they brought in last season, it does feel like they're not going to stop in this transfer market either. We already know that Christopher Nkunku is coming in. They were in for a couple of centre midfielders, and it looks like Caicedo might be the most likely of those all of a sudden. So Pochettino's got quite a big squad on his hands already, and a really big job at kind of picking through it to work out what his squad will look like when the season kicks off. Do you think Pochettino's the right man to take Chelsea forward now?
It's difficult to say, isn't it? Because I think when he obviously came to Southampton, it was a building job from the bottom up, really. Obviously, he did a great job. Came into Tottenham, similar again. I think he bought really well, quite cleverly with a few players. But here now, he's already got the budget. He's got the players in place. He's expected to build something straight away, and that it doesn't look like Todd Boehly is going to be the kind of man who's going to have patience, especially when the whole story and the whole kind of memo throughout the season has been Graham Potter's going to get time, is a long-term project, and evidently that wasn't the case in the end. So who knows? I've really not got the answer to that. He's a great coach. We know that he's a great coach.
Absolutely.
But is he going to be able to deliver what they want, which is titles?
I honestly don't know with him. And it's funny because we've got through nearly a whole review of Chelsea's season without talking about the man that Pochettino is replacing too much. One win Frank Lampard got in the league for Chelsea. And I can't get my head around what that appointment was. For anyone. I don't know who that was ever going to go well for. For Lampard, it was a poison chalice. It had already gone wrong there for him. His reputation was already in the mud from his days at Everton and how poorly his time at there had gone in the end. And there was no way he was going to make a success of things. It seemed like Chelsea put all their hopes on the fact that he would motivate players enough to get them through that Champions League tie to Real Madrid. And that was just never going to happen. They were played off the park in both legs. There was just absolutely no chance that was going to come through. does the appointment of Lampard speak volumes of how little Chelsea prepared for this season in some ways? And again, are we looking at a second change of manager where they would have been better off just keeping who they already had?
Yeah, I mean, we spoke about it, didn't we, early in the season? It went that far with Potter that we thought it was bad result after bad result. You know, there were a couple of good results sort of it amongst that, but we wondered.
I honestly just thought he'd finished the season.
It gone that far where we thought, well, surely they're not going to get rid of him now because he did,
exactly.
You know, and I just can't believe the timing of it. Really, that they did get rid of him. They didn't just wait until the end of the season and see. Hang on, let's give him, you know, the rest of the year, because really they were almost kind of, the season was gone by that point. They sacked him anyway. Top four was out of reach, and I don't really know what they had to gain. They really thought they were going to win the Champions League off of what they've served up this year, just because they've hired Lampard. And I got to sympathise with Lampard. Like, I feel terrible for him, to be fair.
I don't know if I did. I just think it was a stupid decision to take that job. I think the last 3 appointments for Lampard have been odd jobs to take. I understand why he took the Chelsea job the first time, because it was an opportunity he thought wouldn't come up again. How wrong he was. He was there again very soon. The Everton job was the wrong job for him to take. I feel like it was... his head was in the clouds when he took that. I mean, they finished 12th in the end, 4 points above West Ham, who we thought were going to get relegated at one point, 5 points above Bournemouth, below Fulham for the first time in Premier League history, I believe. It's a shocking season. What do they aim for next season, Dave?
The teams that are up there, I think top 6, are all comfortably better teams than Chelsea. And it got to the point where you were expecting Chelsea to get beat most games.
Yeah.
So it can't get any worse than that. It actually can't get any worse than that. This is the worst we've ever seen Chelsea. Even when Mourinho was at the end and he had them hovering around sort of above relegation, I've not seen any worse than this team. It can't get any worse. So it's really difficult to say, isn't it, where they go from here. Anything better than what they're serving up at present time is an improvement. If they can just start enjoying the football again, that's the main thing. And the manager can come in and kind of get his ideas across, get a settled team. Because when Lampard we've seen since Lampard's been here, there's been chopping and changing all over the place. You can see that there's players in there that he thinks he knows he can't trust. So it's going to be interesting to see what Pochettino does.